Today's parable is called The Forgotten Bench. There was an old bench beside a river. It sat beneath the shade of a great tree whose branches stretched over the water. Years ago, the bench had been used. Its wood was smooth, its paint was bright. People came from everywhere to sit upon it. Young couples watched the sunset there. Families rest there after long walks. Children climb upon it while their parents laugh nearby. Travelers sat quietly and listened to the sound of the river moving over the stones. The bench loved those days. Every morning it waited eagerly to see who would arrive. Every evening reflect upon the stories it had witnessed. But time, as it always does, continued moving. The paint faded, the wood became worn. New attractions appeared along the river. People found other places to gather. The crowds became smaller, then smaller still, until one day hardly anyone stopped at all. The bench remained where it has always been, watching, waiting, remembering. Years passed, leaves fell and returned. Storms came and went, the river continued flowing, yet the bench grew lonely. One evening, as the sun set lower over the water, the bench looked at the people walking past. Hundreds passed each day, yet none stopped, none sat, none noticed. The bench sighed with itself. I suppose my purpose is over, it thought. I once mattered, I once helped people, but now I'm forgotten. The river continued flowing beside it. The bench listened to the water. It almost seemed as though the river wished to answer, but the river said nothing. The next evening was much the same. The bench watched the world hurry by. Some people stared at the phones, others rushed to appointments. Some were laughing, some were worried, yet none saw the old bench. The bench began to believe what it feared most, that it no longer mattered, that its best days were behind it, that it had been left behind by time itself. Then one evening, something unusual happened. A man approached along the river path. He was dressed simple. There was nothing outwardly remarkable about him, yet there was a peace about him that seemed deeper than the river itself. He walked slowly, not because he was tired, but because he had noticed things. Things everyone else seemed to miss. He noticed the birds, he noticed the breeze, he noticed the ripples in the water, and then he noticed the bench. The man stopped. He smiled. And for the first time in years, someone sat down. The bench felt the weight settle upon it. It was a simple thing, yet it felt like a miracle. The man rested quietly and looked out across the river. The evening light danced upon the water. For a long time, neither spoke. Then the bench finally asked the question it had carried for years. Why did you stop? The man smiled, because you are here. The bench was confused. Everyone else walked past. They do not need me anymore. The man placed his hand gently upon the weather wood. Is that what you believe? The bench hesitated. It is what I see, the man nodded. Then he asked, do you remember the young couple who sat here and watched the sunset? The bench was surprised. Yes, I remember. Do you remember the father who sat here after receiving difficult news? Yes, I remember. Do you remember the woman who carried here every morning to pray? The bench memory stirred. Yes, I remember her too. The man smiled. So do I. The bench became quiet. The river continued flowing. The man continued. You believe your purpose was to be noticed, but your purpose was never to be noticed. It was to serve. The bench had never considered that. The man pointed towards the river. Look at the water. The bench watched. The river moved steadily forward. The river does not ask who noticed it. It simply continues to flow. It gives lives wherever it goes. The bench listened carefully. The man continued. You offered rest. You offered comfort. You carried conversations. You held prayers. You supported weary hearts. You were present when people needed a place to pause. The bench felt something stirring within its old wooden frame. But they do not come anymore. The man smiled again. Perhaps not as often, but every act of love remains. Nothing given in love is ever wasted. The bench looked down at its worn boards. For years it had seen only age, only cracks, only fading paint. Yet now it began seeing something else, evidence. Evidence of every life it had touched, evidence of every burden it had helped carry, evidence of every moment it had shared. The man stood and looked over the river. The sky was painted with gold and amber light. The bench asked one final question. Who are you? The man looked back with kindness in his eyes. I am the one who remembers. And with that, he continued walking along the river path. The bench watched until he disappeared into the evening light. Then it looked once more at the river. For the first time in many years, it no longer felt forgotten because it finally understood something important. Being unnoticed is not the same as being forgotten. The world may overlook what God remains. The crowd may pass by the heavens of treasure, and the value of things not determined by how many people see it. Its value is found in love it has given. The river flowed beside the bench, just as it always had. Only now the bench heard something different in the water. A quiet reminder. You are a remember. You always were. The river within reflection. Sometimes we feel like the forgotten bench, overlooked, passed by, left behind. We compare ourselves to others and wonder where our purpose had ended. But the purpose is not measured by attention. Purpose is measured by love. The river does not stop flowing because no one is watching. And your life does not lose meaning because others failed to notice it. You may feel forgotten, but the one who remembers still sees you. And sometimes that is enough to keep the river flowing. Thank you for watching.